So I have gotten a few requests to do some Warzone videos, and in my never-ending search for interesting topics, I came across one that's rather simple. It's pretty straightforward, and it just hasn't been done well at all by anyone. And that is going to be simply, where are the best places to drop? After researching some of the top videos out there on this topic, they all either seem to focus about loot or they try to talk about strategy. Now, first of all, I would argue that loot is not the most important thing to consider. It's up there, but it's probably not the most important thing. And secondly, a lot of these people are talking about strategy when I think a lot of their success is due to skill. I think they get kind of confused because they may think that they're doing very well and that's because they're smart, whereas I think it's more about that they're just really good at shooting things. I seem to have an inability to avoid making controversial statements, so at some point during this video, you will probably think I have messed something up. If that's the case, let me know in the comments, and also maybe subscribe if you feel you have garnered anything by watching this video. When dropping into Verdansk, what things should you be considering? Loot? Undoubtedly. Where the circle is? Sure. Whether or not other people will be dropping there? Yeah, that's important too. How about elevation? Proximity to other locations? Cover, buy stations, contracts. These are things that I found to be strangely omitted from many other videos on the topic, and I think they are vastly more important than simply discussing loot. What I am talking about here is positioning, and here comes controversial statement number 1. You can win any gunfight with any gun and less gun skill if you have sufficiently superior positioning. I have won countless gunfights just by being in a superior position with common guns, only to find that my opponent, who is now dead, had a custom loadout. Positioning is key. The first principle of positioning that I almost never hear anyone talk about is elevation. Elevation is so important that you can win with a pistol if your elevation advantage is vastly superior. Take, for example, downtown. Anyone who has animosity towards downtown probably relates their distaste in this way. Oh, I don't want to deal with the fucking rooftops. If we translate this statement into strategic talk, it means that advantages in elevation are too easy to obtain and too significant to combat in downtown. We all know how difficult it is to fight someone on a rooftop in downtown. They have a very easy time shooting you and you can't hit them for shit. Of course, there are exceptions. The top 5% of players can probably win consistently even in these severely disadvantageous spots, but these are the exceptions. For the vast majority of us, we are not going to be able to win in these instances most of the time. So does this type of elevation only provide an advantage in downtown? Of course not. Elevation gives an advantage in an open field, in a 2-story building, on a hill, it doesn't matter. So when thinking about where to drop, always consider elevation, even if it means inferior looting potential. It's that important. And P.S., don't just think about elevation at the start, but where can you move closer into the circle to still maintain the high ground? Remember, you always want to have the high ground advantage over your opponents as you move into the smaller and smaller circles. Elevation should dictate your future movements, and I would suggest thinking twice about engaging when this advantage is not in your favor, especially if you're like me and your gun skill is liable to turn into shooting that mimics having a seizure at any moment. Next, we will talk about cover and your proximity to other locations. Now, I have no study or research to back this up, but I think we can all pretty much agree that 90% of the time, you're going to have to move from the location you dropped in at just to make it into the next circle, which means that you should probably be thinking 1 to 2 circles ahead. A common question I ask myself is there any possible next circle that will leave me completely screwed? And if there is, I probably want to get out of there or not even drop there in the first place. This is going to be my departure away from most of the big YouTubers and videos out there, and will be controversial statement number 2. The quality of your drop location depends on the circle. Superstore is not always a good drop, neither is Quarry or Promenade or anywhere for that matter. It's all about the circle. I love Quarry and Train Station as drops, but if the circle leaves out one of these locations and will likely force me to move quite a ways away and force me to rush my looting, I will not drop there. I have been killed far too many times by acting rashly out of a need to get going in order to make the next circle. Whenever I rush into a building too quickly because the gas is coming, there is always someone there to make me regret it. Make sure you have time. I have heard some say that they will never drop too far into the circle, and that is stupid in my opinion. Their reason for doing this is something I will address next, but if you drop dead center because you have a good location in terms of elevation, good looting potential, and plenty of time to be cautious and plan your next move, that is great. Take advantage of this opportunity. Would you prefer more time to plan your movements or less? I feel that question is a no-brainer. Now, the opposite side of this argue that they want to stay close to the gas, or somewhat close, in order to minimize the directions they can be shot from. Now, this sounds reasonable before you give it a minute of thought. If you are cutting down on the directions you can be shot from, aren't you sort of quartering yourself? Let's use an analogy. You know those storage containers located across the map? The ones that are basically a little box with one way in and out? Well, I could argue that this box is a great place to be. Well, why, you might ask? That's because I am minimizing the directions I can be shot from, of course. There's only one place I need to worry about because that's the only way in. It's really great, you see. I can't be shot from the back, from the side, or from above. It's perfect strategy. Plus, I have this nice little piece of cover in case someone comes by. A trophy system covers the entire thing from projectiles, and it's dark so my opponents will have a slightly tougher time seeing me. Now, if you're starting to think this box is actually a good idea, you're falling into a broad and easy trap. We can go ahead and call bullshit on this line of reasoning. If you cut off lines of sight by effectively placing a wall behind you, you are also cutting off your ability to move, and mobility is extremely important. In a gunfight, would you rather have 4 possible directions of movement or 3? The obvious answer is 4. Why? Well, there's 2 reasons. More potential for acquiring cover and advantageous positions, and less predictability. So if you think it's smart to stay close to the gas to cut off possible enemy directions, you might want to rethink that position. As if this point hasn't been dismantled enough, it is a pretty common military strategy to cut off your enemy's ability to retreat. Yeah, it's called something like hammer and anvil strategy, I think. That sounds familiar. I think I might have made a video about that. Another good reason to choose a drop location that will likely survive till Circle 2 is that you don't have to run out into the open immediately. I've already mentioned how I love Quarry, but it does have a problem. If you are forced out, you are running into an open field with very little cover for the most part. If you have to move or simply want to, make sure you're not taking any long intervals strolling through an open field. I don't really think that I have to explain why you don't want to do that. And if you want to think in terms of cutting off enemy directions, think about cover that you can mantle over. It doesn't restrict mobility while it still blocks a direction. Also, elevation gives you a natural advantage for acquiring cover and can be easily manipulated to block lines of sight. Simply move away from your opponent and their line of sight will be blocked. Finally, I want to talk about probably the most overlooked things when it comes to Warzone drops, and that's going to be buy stations and contracts. Have you ever just landed somewhere, acquired a shit ton of dough, and then you're like, okay, where's the nearest buy station? And you realize it's 200, 300 meters away? I have, and this frickin' sucks. Because buy stations are such an easy way to gain a whole host of gunfight advantages, or just to even level the playing field because a lot of other people visit buy stations, you're probably going to want to place these in the forefront of your mind, not in the background as a lot of YouTubers portray. Contracts are also really overlooked, but for a slightly different reason. The reason I feel that they're overlooked is not for the sake of completing them. They're great for reconnaissance. When people pick these up, you know where they are. Obviously, bounties will tell you the approximate location of a squad, and most wanted contracts give enemy locations out specifically, but making a mental note of contracts in your area can help you realize if you are in the midst of an enemy. I try to examine the contracts around my drop location and to choose a drop location with plenty of them so that if someone picks one up, I have a good idea of where they are and if anyone is near me. To revert back to buy stations, I don't think much needs to be said. But why the hell is their presence not talked about more when it comes to drop locations? Sure, a lot of places have them, but sometimes you get screwed by their placement. Some leave you far past fucked, some are perfect for getting what you need, and some are hotly contested. And given the severe disadvantage you will find yourself in by not visiting one of these at least once, they should be given way more thought than a mere, okay, I got my money, now where's the nearest buy? Getting an early loadout drop can be incredibly beneficial. A precision airstrike has saved my ass more times than I can count, and a self-revive can sometimes come in clutch. You should really consider your buy stations. with all that being said, I don't think I really have anything else to add, and nor do I think anything that I talked about here has really been brought up in other videos, at least from what I have seen. If you take issue with anything that I said, or you want to correct me on something, please let me know down in the comments. And if you'd like me to do more with Warzone, please let me know that as well. And as always, thank you so much for watching.